name is Officer Michael, and I've worked with the ABPD for about 10 or so years now. It's not the most exciting job in the world, but it does help pay the bills and put food on my table, so I guess I can't really complain about any of that. With that being said, my job usually was never particularly easy for me. There were days I would have to work an 18-hour shift because of all the calls that the station was getting for rather simple mishaps from the town. These would include relatively minor things such as cats in trees, small fires, and the occasional missing person every now and then. Like I said before, my job wasn't very exciting. However, there was this one small group of puppies that honestly turned my time at work from exhausting to amazing. These group of puppies were called the Paw Patrol. To say that these pups were a blessing would be an understatement. These pups, at least to me, were a godsend from the heavens above. These pups, Chase the police dog, Marshall the fire dog, Zuma the aquatic pup, Rocky the recycling pup, Sky the air pup, and Rubble the construction pup, were a big help in keeping Adventure Bay at peace. Plus, their 10-year-old leader Ryder was a very mature and smart kid that not only formed the group into what they were, but even made the pup base and tower. Hell, I even got the opportunity to meet the Paw Patrol in person. And let me say, they're a really great group of pups. They're very well-mannered, very polite, and respectful to their authorities, and they sure love to play. I can't tell you how many times they wanted me to sit and stay and play fetch with them. Now, you might think that with the Paw Patrol going around and filling out most of our duties, that there would be a bit of resentment by the other cops towards them. But for them taking away some of the opportunities to make a little bit more money. But that was never the case. For years, we had broken our backs to do some rather ridiculous odd jobs. But now that we have the opportunity to actually focus more on real cases, if anything, it just helped us out a lot. So yeah, the Paw Patrol were pretty amazing. However, that all ended about a year back, and let me just say that it was something terrible. I was in the office when this all happened. I was busy getting some much-needed paperwork done when all of a sudden the chief busted out of his office in a panic. He told us all to stop what we were doing and get ourselves to the Adventure Bay Forest area ASAP. When I asked him what was the problem, he told me that he would explain everything when we got there. So I got up, got my police jacket on, and made my way to my squad car and drove down to the Adventure Bay Forest area. It took close to about 30 minutes to get there, but once we had all arrived, we got our cars and made our way towards the entrance of the forest. Once we had all gotten there, I noticed that Ryder, Chase, Sky, and Rubble looked very scared and concerned. I walked up to them and asked them a couple of questions about what exactly had happened. "It's our pups, Marshall, Zuma, and Rocky," Ryder said with a worried look on his face. "What about them? What's the problem?" I asked. "They all went out for a swim earlier on today, and if anything, to help out Rocky with his aquaphobia about 4 hours back," Chase began. "But they haven't came back yet. Hell, they haven't even came back since. We tried contacting them, but they didn't answer. We tried looking for them ourselves, but for some reason, we can't seem to really track their collars or anything at all. We tried searching around some more later on, but the forest was too dense to keep looking without getting lost." "You don't need to worry about that, Paw Patrol. That's what we're all here for. We're going to make sure we find them and bring them back home safely. They probably forgot to take off their collars when they went swimming, and most likely short-circuited them. They're most likely still at the pond swimming around," I said to them in a reassuring manner. Ryder thanked me for the service I was doing, and I happily accepted it. After that, I made my way back into the group of armed police officers at the forest entryway. The Commander-in-Chief, Officer Marcus, started grouping us in pairs of twos of our search party. Once he was done with that, he started assigning parts of the forest to each group of officers. Me and my partner, Kate, were assigned to the main pathway of the forest. We both immediately entered the pathway and started our search for the missing pups. 5 minutes turned to 10 minutes, then to 30, then an hour, then to 2 hours. We kept searching as hard as we could, not leaving, quite literally, any stone unturned. After about 3 hours of searching, the sky began to darken. My partner and I immediately pulled out our flashlights and continued on going. After about a minute of walking, I felt something being wrapped around my ankle. I lifted my foot and shone my light at what had caught my foot. What I saw made the hairs on the back of my neck stand straight up. On my foot was one of the pup's collars. It looked as if it had been yanked off by something, or in this case, someone. The plastic clasp that held the collar together was practically snapped off at the edges. The main badge that identified the specific pup and who they did was smashed to bits, and the front image scratched in numerous places that made it almost impossible to identify whose it was. If the color hadn't still been on there, that is. There was also trace amounts of blood that stained a good portion of the collar. Honestly, I honestly wouldn't have known if it was Marshall's collar had some of the light red fabric had not been visible from all that blood that had covered it. I looked at the collar and then to my partner, who had a look of worry plastered on her face. I immediately grabbed my police radio and dialed in the chief of police. Chief Marcus, this is Officer Michael.
Hey, did you find anything? Did you manage to find the pup?
Negative on the pups, Chief. However, I did find Marshall's collar. It's covered in blood. You might want to call in a bus or something, because I have a feeling that they're probably hurt.
Alright, I'll call in a bus. You keep searching, officer.
Yes, sir. 10-4. I put my radio away and kept looking around the dense forest. Now the sun had practically gone down at this point, and the whole forest was covered in darkness, with only our flashlights illuminating the area. Me and my partner immediately started searching once again, and after a few more minutes of searching, we found Zuma and Rocky's collars as well, but in worse shape than the other collars I had found. The collars had not only been smashed to pieces, but had also been torn to shreds, like a claw had torn through the fabric. I felt anxiety fill me up as I pressed on searching, hoping and praying to God that the pups were alright. It didn't take long for me to get a small whiff of an irony smell. My partner and I continued to follow the path, where the scent grew stronger and stronger with each step. Then, without any warning, I wound up slipping in a small puddle of some sort. My partner had rushed up to me and see if I was alright, and thankfully I was. But I had shined my light on myself to inspect for any injuries, and I saw a large amount of blood splattered all over my bulletproof vest and pants, along with a large puddle underneath me. I quickly got up and inspected myself for any wounds, but there were none. I shined my flashlight at the puddle of blood that I had slipped in. I noticed a small trail of the crimson red liquid leading towards a small clearing nearby the forest. I felt hesitant to go, as I expected the worst to be there, but I knew that I had to. Slowly walking towards the clearing, guns cocked and loaded, we stepped into the clearing and I called out, "Marshall? Zuma, Rocky! Are you okay? If you're here, give us a bark!" It was in there that I heard a small, weak moan coming from about a few feet away from me. I shined my light towards where the sound was, and my heart sunk to the bottom of my chest. Holy shit! That was the only words that it honestly could make out at what was presented towards me. Less than 10 feet away from me were the bodies of Zuma, Rocky, and Marshall, or at least what was left of them. Zuma's head was hanging on one of the tree branches. It had been ripped straight from his body, his spinal cord holding and dangling the pup's head firmly on the branch. Zuma's face was mangled and disfigured, and one of his eyes had been stabbed by a sharp rock, blood and eye juice still pouring from the mutilated eye socket. His lower jaw had been yanked and stretched to the point that it was completely dislodged from his skull, only being connected by a small slab of skin that hadn't been torn in the stretching process. His body laid in a bloody heap below his severed head, untouched and still intact. Rocky had been beaten numerous times with what I assumed to be a very large rock, his head being the main target of the brutal assault. Rocky's skull had been completely split in half from the blunt trauma, with chunks of brain seeping out of the cracked skull. The rest of the body was covered in teeth marks, with chunks of skin and muscle tissue removed, revealing the bone. Marshall had been completely ripped in half, with intestines, kidneys, and liver exposed, dangling out from the bottom half of his torso. I immediately vomited at the sight of this. My partner immediately called up for backup on her radio, and as I ran towards the pups to check for any signs of life. Obviously, for Zuma and Rocky, they were both long dead at this point. However, Marshall was a different story altogether. I had made my way towards him, and I went to check his pulse. To my shock and surprise, he still had one. He was also panting very heavily. I remember hearing him moan and whimper in pain as he locked eyes with me. I could have started bawling right then and there, When I saw him, he was still conscious, and then he whispered to me,
Find my legs, please.
I didn't want to leave his side, so I called for my partner to go and search for his legs, which she found dumped next to a bush. It didn't take long for an ambulance to get where we were. Zuma and Rocky were obviously pronounced dead on the spot, while Marshall was rushed to the ER for emergency treatment. However, due to complications and blood loss, he passed away during surgery about 2 hours later. I normally don't cry during 911 emergencies, but that day, when I found out that Marshall was gone, I bawled my eyes out like a fucking baby. There was obviously a funeral held for the fallen pups. As well as everyone else in the town were going to give them the best of the best. Each pup that had passed was buried in a coffin that was shaped and painted and carved into the cars that they had drove for each mission, with flowers and candles surrounding them. Next to each coffin was a large wreath with each pup's image in the center of it. The mayor herself was the one who presided over the funeral for each pup. Needless to say, the funeral was brutal to say the least. There wasn't a single person that wasn't crying their eyes out. And needless to say, I myself was one of those people. Riders, Sky, and Rubble were devastated to say the least, which I guess is not really that surprising. Rubble was bawling his eyes out, Sky was in a wreck, Ryder didn't even look up at the coffins, and Chase... Oh my god, Chase. He was completely inconsolable. He was the only one not seated in a chair. He was lying down next to Marshall's casket, with a small bear plush in his paws. He was weeping hysterically, not bothering to leave the side of his murdered friend. Anyone that would even try to move him, he would just sob some more and embrace the coffins like it was his own life support. The funeral lasted for about 2.5 hours. Everyone, including Ryder himself, gave a rather touching eulogy. They were all buried in the main hill of Adventure Bay Cemetery, large tombstones decorated with gemstones and the images of each pup inscribed on the slab of stone. The funeral concluded with each of the deceased pups giving a 12-gun salute from me and the other cops. After that day, there was a week worth of mourning for everyone, including the rest of the Paw Patrol. I would have joined in, but I had a new case that I had to work on. The day after the funeral, I was at my desk, when I was already startled by a large file being slammed into my desk. It was a new case that I was going to work on. I knew exactly what it was for before I had even opened the thing up. The rest of the day was spent trying to find suspects. However, due to the fact of the lack of evidence, there was barely any few leads. The only person that we could have even considered to be a suspect was Mayor Humdinger. However, that lead wound up getting cold real quickly, after a few questions and little evidence to back anything up. So yeah, we were pretty fucked to say the least. Day after day, the case grew colder and colder. I myself took time to visit the remaining Paw Patrol gang and give condolences and treats to the pups whenever I could. Now I know that it might seem a little bit odd for me to go and visit them so often, but the Paw Patrol were truly like family to me. I honestly didn't really have anybody else to really call family, as a majority of them had honestly passed away, and they helped me fill that void in my life. However, just like the last time, it was all torn apart again after I'd gotten that phone call. It was around midnight when my cell phone started ringing. I groggily got up and answered the phone. Hello?
Please help!
I immediately bolted upright after hearing that scream for help. I honestly don't know who in the world had yelled it out, but I soon wound up getting my answer after waking up entirely and putting my ear back onto the phone. It was Sky. She was screaming like crazy. I couldn't really hear too much else except for one final thing before the phone cut off.
We need help! Please, whatever.
I immediately got up, grabbed my gun, my radio, my flashlight, and ran to the car. I didn't care that I was in my pajamas. I knew that something was wrong and I needed to get there soon. I got to the base in less than a few minutes, and as I got out of my car, I immediately heard nothing but deafening silence. This was not a good sign. I carefully maneuvered my way, gun in hand, to the front door. It had been completely knocked off of its hinges with scratch marks covering the front door. I carefully peeked inside of the doorway, only to see the entire base completely trashed. Everything in the base was either smashed to bits or strewn across one of the rooms. There were also deep scratch marks that covered the walls like a morbid decoration. I searched around some more and saw muddy footprints leading from the kitchen area to the back door. I followed them and it led to a large cave on the outskirts of town. I quickly dialed the other officers. "This is Officer Michael. I have a 1027, 1054, and possible 1063. I'm currently at the outskirts of town near the main cave next to the forest. I need backup now!" I put away my radio and I made my way into the cave. I didn't want to get my flashlight, just in case if somebody had honestly found me or something along those lines. I walked deeper and deeper into the cave until I noticed a lone torch burning brightly about 10 feet away from me. I walked over to it and grabbed it, and then I made my way deeper into the cave, my heart pounding in fear. After about 10 minutes, I soon came across a large circular room of some sort. It wasn't barricaded or anything. The walls were decorated with lit torches that lit up the room enough for me to get a glimpse of what was inside. It was completely empty, with the sole exception of some gear and clothing in the middle of the room. I walked up towards it, and my stomach knotted up. On the ground was the broken and tattered equipment and uniforms of the Paw Patrol. I started freaking out at this. What the fuck was going on? I soon noticed a small door at the end of the large room. Walked up towards it and slowly opened it. The room itself, compared to the other room that I had just been, was a lot smaller and darker. I turned on my flashlight and noticed a large rusted cage and a door next to it. I slowly approached the cage and peered inside. To my horror, it was Chase, completely motionless. I quickly grabbed at the cage door and yanked it open. It thankfully opened up rather easily. I immediately checked on Chase, and thankfully he wasn't dead or injured in any way, just completely knocked out. I wanted to just grab Chase and run out of the cave as fast as possible, but I knew that I had to find the others. I slowly grabbed the doorknob that was next to the cage, and slowly opened it. Just a crack. I honestly wish to this very day that I hadn't. In the room, there was a large tar-like beast. It was around 7 feet tall with a twisted and mangled body. Its hands were long, blood-stained claws that warped and contorted with each passing move. The face, however, was the worst part. It had no features on it whatsoever, with the sole exception of a large, gaping maw with row after row of razor-bloodied, sharp teeth. Next to the thing were the remains of Ryder, Sky, and Rubble. I couldn't contain myself anymore. I let out a small scream, which I immediately muted as soon as it started up. However, it was already too late. The thing had noticed me by that time, and it let out a blood-curdling scream. I immediately slammed the door. At this point, I was already shitting myself with fear. I felt the door being rammed by that thing over and over and over again. I immediately grabbed Chase and started to run at full force. All the while, that demonic monstrosity of a being smashed the door down and was chasing after me with a speed that nearly matched mine. I quickly pulled out my gun and shot at the thing at least 6 times. However, it didn't seem to really do much of anything. I dropped my gun and just kept on running. I heard the thing getting closer and closer to me with each passing minute. In a desperate attempt to try and save both my life and Chase's, I yanked off my crucifix off my neck and threw it at the beast. The crucifix made a perfect shot into the thing's throat. It stopped instantly and started screaming and yelling as it clawed at its neck and throat, trying to get the crucifix out of its body, but with no use. I took the much-needed time to get the fuck out of that cave as soon as possible. Once I got to my car with Chase in my arms, I sped out onto the road and down to my apartment and made my way inside. I quickly locked the door and went back up to Chase. Thankfully, the only injuries he's had were a few cuts and a few bruises, and a major bump on his head, but nothing major. I immediately called up my boss and told him everything. He told me that they had already pulled up to where I had been a few minutes back. I warned them about what I had saw in there and told them to be careful. He said he would, and hung up. The next day, I quit my job. Me, and along with Chase, moved out of town. He didn't seem to care. His friends were all dead anyway. I later read in the paper about the remains of Ryder and the other pups being discovered in the cave, but no beast in sight. The only thing that was found was a small, burnt-out gold crucifix that lied in the middle of the cave floor. Drip, drip, drip. The first few drops of rain make contact with my tiny apartment window, only to be met with a large wave of rain pouring down like a steady flowing stream. The sound of thunder echoed through my room, shattering the bone-crushing silence, and the flashing of lightning illuminating my darkened apartment. I sat there on my bed, awake, my eyes bloodshot and my body shaking in fear. 2 weeks. It's been 2 long, agonizing weeks since my experience with that thing at the cave. Honestly, I don't think it would have affected me as badly as it did, but I was proven wrong real quickly. Ever since that day, I haven't been able to function properly. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, I could barely even get out of bed each day. However, that's nothing compared to what Chase has been going through for the past couple of weeks. He's had to live with the nightmares and trauma of seeing that fucking thing drag him and the rest of his friends to that cave and devouring them right in front of him. To make matters worse, he would often go into very extreme night terrors. Oftentimes, these night terrors would become very violent, with Chase growling and biting at whatever he was trying to attack. He even bit me a few times. I don't really blame him, to be honest. As of now, Chase is fast asleep, next to me in bed, his body twitching every so often, but other than that, he remains still. I took a deep breath and grasped the wooden crucifix that was clenched tightly in my right hand. I haven't been able to sleep for about 3 days now. I've kept having graphic nightmares of what had happened 2 weeks earlier, and they've honestly fucked me up in ways that I wouldn't even know. Even if I could sleep, I certainly wasn't planning on it. I knew for an absolute fact that thing was still out there, and it was certainly pissed that I messed with its mealtime. Not only that, it was probably planning on ripping me limb from limb after I threw that crucifix at it, burning the inside of its mouth and throat. What made me even more paranoid was the fact that I even knew that it knew who I was. It did see my face after all. There's something I need to discuss with you all, as I guess it would be the best time to discuss it. Plus, I think you all deserve a bit of an update at what had transcribed these past couple of weeks. To start off, no. The cops didn't find the monster. I guess that's not really much of a shocker. From what I was told by a few of my fellow officers that day that I'd quit my job, they had investigated the cave that I had been in, and they only managed to find the broken equipment, collars, and uniforms of the pups. However, they didn't find any of the bodies, with the sole exception of a small puddle of blood. I guess that thing really didn't want to stick around. However, what they told me next was something that completely caught me off guard. Apparently, after they had sealed up the crime scene for further investigation, something had happened. When all the officers and detectives went to the cave to investigate further into the homicides, they found the cave to have been blown shut. What I mean by that is the entrance of the cave was completely sealed shut by numerous rocks and debris. Turns out there was an explosion that was caused by some kind of, explosive that tore down a chunk of the mountain that was on top of the cave that sealed it shut. Nothing could be done to get back into the cave, no matter what kind of machine or explosive was used. This, of course, was rather suspicious to say the least. Why would anybody try and seal up the cave? Maybe it was trying to keep something in, or maybe trying to keep something out. I honestly wouldn't know. After that, it was just me and Chase. We pretty much had to restart our lives from the very start, and let me tell you, it wasn't easy for either of us. I had to go and find myself a new job in the new town that I was in, which was a problem for me since the town was so freaking tiny. Luckily, I managed to get a part-time job working as a janitor for a mom-and-pop grocery store about a mile from the apartment complex I was staying in. As for Chase, he really didn't go out that much anymore, unless he acted as a seeing eye dog for me when I wasn't working at the store. The reason I did this was to try and disguise myself as best as I could, just in case that thing was watching me. Also, it was to make sure that Chase was by my side at all times. This is how we lived for the next 2 weeks of our lives. Now I'm currently in bed with Chase right now. I wait hour after hour until the sun finally arose. It was then that I had finally let my broken and disgusting body fall right to sleep. After a few hours of rest, I groggily got up from my bed and got myself dressed for work. Before I walked out of the door, I had gotten a phone call from my former boss, Officer Marcus. "Hello," I groggily said. "Officer Marcus, you need to come back to Adventure Bay now," my chief said in a stern manner. "You can forget it, Chief. I'm not going to risk my life for that damn city ever. That's not what I'm calling you for, Michael." I immediately felt silent at those words. If he wasn't calling me for a new case, then what the hell was he calling me for? "What?" I said plainly. "Look, we need you at the Adventure Bay Cemetery ASAP. And bring Chase along with you as well." Click. Before I knew it, Officer Marcus had already hung up the phone before I could ask him any more questions. I was rather hesitant, to say the least, to go back to Adventure Bay, that is. But something in the back of my mind kept on pushing me to go. After a few minutes of the persistent nagging of my conscience, I finally threw my hands up in the air in defeat and said, "Fuck it." I grabbed my police jacket, sunglasses, gun, keys, and crucifix, just in case, and made my way over towards my room. I opened up the door and immediately found Chase still sleeping on my bed. I knew that for an absolute fact I was going to have a hard time getting Chase to come with me, but I wasn't planning on leaving him here alone. "Hey Chase, wake up buddy," I said, slowly shaking him awake. Chase let out a huge yawn before finally opening up his eyes. "Hey Mike, what's up?" Chase said tiredly. Well, there's something that we need to go do today." "What is it?" Chase asked me. I braced myself for what I was about to say. "We need to go to Adventure Bay." Chase's eyes immediately shot open, and his ears drooped down in fear. He started shaking violently. "No," Chase said weakly. "Look, Chase, I know you don't want to go, but we have—" "I said no!" Chase screamed. "Do you honestly think for a single second that I'd go back to that town? Back to that thing?" I was taken aback by Chase's loud outburst. I mean, I expected him to react badly, but not this bad. I knew I had to try and convince him to come along with me. "Look, Chase, I don't want to go back there either, but we have to do this." "No means no, Mike," Chase rebutted. What about the townspeople? What about the mayor?" I said in a desperate attempt to try and convince him any way I possibly could. "Screw them," Chase said coldly. My mouth dropped at the use of profanity from Chase. I mean, sure, it wasn't a bad word per se, but it certainly wasn't something I'd expect to hear from a Paw Patrol member. "I've worked all my life to take care of this town," Chase began, "and this is how I'm repaid? By all my friends getting murdered by that monster? It's bad enough that I lost Rocky, Zuma, and Marshall." Chase began to tear up. "But I also lost Ryder, Rubble, and Sky too. So why should I care what happens to that hick town?" I took a deep breath. honestly made sense to me. I knelt down to Chase and started petting him. Listen, Chase, I understand that you don't want to do this. I honestly really do. But we have to do this. We really do. I promise you, though, you'll be safe with me during the entire time we're there. I promise. Chase walked away from me and jumped off the bed. He sat down and stared at the window and contemplating. After a few minutes of deafening silence, Chase turned to me and said in a monotone voice, "Fine, I'll go. But on one exception." "What is it?" I asked. "We go back to the Paw Patrol lookout. There are some things I need to get from there." I nodded my head in agreement. After that, the both of us walked out of the apartment building and made our way towards the car. After about 2 hours worth of driving, both Chase and I made it to the adventure-based cemetery. I honestly thought that since we were both late, there wouldn't have been that many police officers on the case. However, my assumption was proven wrong real fast, as it seemed that every officer on the ABPD seemed to have been dispatched to that specific area. After finding a place to park our vehicle, both Chase and I made our way towards the entrance. Once there, I was immediately met with my former chief. "Ah, yes, Officer Michael and Officer Chase. It's glad to see you both again after all this time," Officer Marcus said. He shook my hand and patted Chase's head. "You're welcome, I guess," I said, a bit weirded out. "Well, I'm not going to keep you two here for long. Chase, I need to speak with Officer Michael in private, please." "What? Can't I listen too?" Chase pouted. "It's rather hard to say, Chase. But don't worry. Officer Mary here is going to bring you to the other officers for some donuts. Sounds good?" Chase looked at me as if to ask, "What should I say?" "Don't worry, Chase. Me and Officer Marcus won't be long. You go ahead and get some donuts. Oh, and eat a couple for me," I said, winking at him. Chase smiled at me and then walked with Officer Mary to a cop car not too far away from the entrance of the cemetery. After Chase was gone, I turned to my boss and said, "What the hell did you bring me here for?" "Look, Officer Michael, there's been a disturbance recently here in the graveyard, and we have some suspicions about what's been going on." "How is that?" I asked him. "Just follow me," the chief replied. We both slowly began making our way towards the hill of the cemetery, and once we had gotten to the top of it, my jaw dropped at what laid before me. What the fuck? Police tape covered the main area where all the graves of the Paw Patrol had been buried, was now desecrated. All 3 plots that had contained the remains of Rocky, Zuma, and Marshall had been dug up by something, although from the looks of it, it certainly wasn't a shovel. Not only were the graves eviscerated, but the coffins were also missing as well. I looked at my boss in shock. "Yup," he began. "The priest that runs a church and cemetery here in town found these graves like this while he was trying to perform a yearly blessing, as they called it. After seeing all that, he called us up, and we also decided to give you a call." "What was the purpose of calling me? What in the world would I even know about this?" I answered back. "Well, to be honest, we didn't expect you to know anything about this at all. However, we did find this near one of the graves." The chief then pulled out a pink collar that had been torn in at least some areas, but it still seemed intact. I recognized the collar anywhere. It was Sky's collar. During our investigation of the cave, before it was mysteriously sealed shut, we managed to find and extract the data from this collar. Thankfully, this collar somehow managed to get in the graveyard, and once we got it, we fixed it up, and it actually worked. However, the other collars weren't so lucky. Anyway, as we extracted the data from the collar, we found recording files. We immediately extracted the files from the collar and placed them into this little MP3 player here. The officer then pulled out a small, cheap-looking MP3 player from his front pocket and handed it to me. I put on some headphones and clicked play on the first file. I was immediately hit with the sound of screaming and crying from Sky and the other Paw Patrol members. Then I heard the sound of flesh cutting and bones snapping. However, the screams continued to grow louder and louder with each passing minute. I honestly didn't want to listen to it anymore, so I just threw the headphones off in disgust. Sorry you had to listen to that, Mike, but we found out something that I think might actually derail this case. What? What is it? Do you remember when you told us that there was a pair of footsteps in the Paw Patrol base? Yeah, I replied back. Well, turns out there's actually about 10 more pairs of footprints scattered all around the base. We have reason to conclude that this murder was perpetrated by at least 10 more people than what you led us on to believe. My eyes widened to the size of saucers. There were more of them? This is the reason why we need you back on the case, Mike, Officer Marcus said, placing a hand on my shoulder. You've seen more things than we have, thus, we might actually be able to find this and solve this case if you just help us out. Also, Chase doesn't remember very much about what happened this past couple weeks. All he remembers is running for his life, being dragged into the cave by that beast, and seeing his friends being eaten alive. Damn, Officer Marcus muttered under his breath. Alright, I'm going to need you and Chase to be night watch this evening. Are you fucking serious right now? I said. We just gone through the worst horror of lives and you're asking us to deal with that all over again? Forget it. Officer Marcus's face immediately fell into a frown. You're going to help us, he said flatly. And what if I choose not to? I rebutted. Then I have no other choice than to arrest you. I looked at him intently. Arrest me for what? Obstruction of justice, he said to me sternly. I stood there for what seemed like hours, and then Officer Marcus spoke once more. Look, I don't want to have to do that to you, Mike, but we have 4 dead puppies, 1 dead child, no suspects, and no leads. We really need your help to at least find a possible suspect. However, I will cut you a deal. Do this one thing for us, and we'll never ask you to help with another case again. And, not only that, as a bonus, you and Chase will also receive cash each month as, you could say, in a retirement. I let out a sigh and said, What time? 6 p.m. on the dot. Radio me once you get there, and I'll give you instructions of what you two need to do. I let out one more sigh and then walked back to my car. This certainly wasn't something that I had expected to happen today, but sure enough, it was happening. After a few minutes being lost in thought, I heard the sound of Chase's bark. I looked over to see Chase with a little donut hanging out of his mouth. Thanks again for the donuts, officer, he said before jumping up to me. Hey Mike, I brought you a donut. Thanks, Chase, but I'm not that hungry right now. You go on ahead and eat it. Okay. Chase immediately swallowed the donut in his mouth that he had, and then he went into the car. I followed suit, and within seconds I was driving away and towards the Paw Patrol base. Once there, Chase got out of the car and made his way towards the pup house. He rummaged around his pup house for a few minutes before pulling out his pup pack, his uniform, and a few other items. He did the same thing for Marshall's house as well. I was honestly surprised. Where the heck did he get those pup packs from? I could have sworn that all the clothes and packs that they had been destroyed back at the cave. Once it seemed that he had everything, he put on his pup pack and ordered it to carry the remaining items back to the car. After getting everything packed up, he got back into the front passenger seat. Chase? Where did you get those pup packs from? I thought they got destroyed, I asked him. Every pup always has a backup pup pack and uniform, Chase said with a sly grin. Well, if that's the case, why did you take Marshall's? We're only gonna need that one case for the night watch tonight, Chase replied. Wait a minute, how did you... Officer Mary told me everything, he said flatly. Well, are you okay with that? I asked once more. That thing killed my friends and ruined my life. It's only fair that I find the monsters that did this and put a stop to it. I didn't say anything more after that. I just drove off to a small motel across town. 6 p.m. The watch on my arm flashed. It was time for the night watch to begin. I made sure that we were both fed and had taken a nap before the stakeout started. Upon loading up everything that we needed into the car, we took off from the motel and made our way toward the heart of Adventure Bay, the Paw Patrol base. Let me just say right here and right now that our night watch was very unsuccessful and very boring. Almost 2.5 hours had passed since we began, and we found nothing out of the ordinary. We looked at the mayor's office, nothing. Then we checked downtown, still nothing. Then we checked the forest, and still nothing. This was starting to feel like more of a wild goose chase than anything, until I spotted something in the distance. I didn't know what it was at the time, so when I saw it, I drove closer to where the spot was. It had a very faint orange glow coming from the path to the cave. I looked over at Chase and told them that I'd be back soon, as I had to go and investigate the glow. I then told him to stay put in the car and that if I wasn't back in an hour, to radio the police. He agreed, and I immediately made towards the glowing light. Upon entry to the path, I quickly hid myself in a long thicket of bushes and trees. Once I had made sure that I was properly undetected, I made my way towards the source of the light. About 10 minutes into the walk, I noticed a large bonfire in the distance. I carefully crept closer towards the fire, and once I knew for a fact that nobody was there, I got out of my little hiding spot and immediately walked towards the fire. As I drew closer towards the dancing flames, I noticed that I was in the exact same spot that the cave was at. And then I saw it. The large makeshift stone altar located north of the bonfire. I walked up to it and noticed a copious amount of blood stained upon it with what looked like knives and other ritualistic items on there. What is this? I asked myself. Almost as soon as I had made that, I heard the sound of multiple people walking down the path that I had just traversed on. I immediately hid myself back in the same thicket of bushes and trees to try and hide myself from the oncoming crowd of people coming my way. As I hid for dear life, I opened up a small opening in the bushes just to see what was going on. After less than a minute of footsteps, I finally saw who was coming down the trail. There were a bunch of people, all dressed in red robes with white cord tied around their waist. At first, the first of the two of the robed people processed down in a ritualistic manner. Four of the robed people carried large wax candles in their hands. The other four walked in twos and were holding two large black caskets of some sort. Another two were holding ropes that connected to a large cage that held the tar-covered beast I had seen. And finally, one final robed person walked with a large book raised up in the air in one hand and a goblet in the other. I didn't know what the hell I was even looking at. I mean, what was this? I would have considered running back to the car. However, I failed to notice that one of the robed men behind me had quickly found out where I was hiding at, and once I turned around, he knocked me out cold with a metal bat. I woke up about a few hours later, after a strange liquid was splashed into my face. I could tell by the putrid and rancid stench that it certainly wasn't water. As I slowly regained consciousness, I noticed that I was right in front of the altar that I had just seen, and the beast was standing next to it in this cage, snarling and reaching its claws out to try and get me. And surrounding me was at least 11 of the hooded creeps I had seen before. Both my arms and legs were both tied to two seppies, causing me to become immobile. "What the fuck is going on?" I yelled out. You should already know by now, a voice called out to me. I immediately turned my head to try and locate the source of the voice, and there, walking towards me, was one of the red-robed people. It kept on walking until it was nearly face to face at me. I couldn't tell who was actually looking at me since, well, the hood was covering its face. Who the hell are you? I screamed. Such a shame that you don't recognize a familiar face. Instantly, the hooded assailant lifted its hood off of its head, and my eyes widened at who I was looking at. It was Mayor Goodway. What? I said in shock and horror. Mayor Goodway smirked at me and then said, "Surprised, aren't you? Well, you're about to be in for a bigger surprise than that." One by one, the other hooded figures slowly began removing their hoods, and I could feel the bile rising in my throat at who I was looking at. Captain Turbot, Katie, Alex, Mr. Porter, Mr. Hudson, Mayor Humdinger, Xander, Farmer Yuma, and Jake. They all stared at me with the same sinister grin that Mayor Goodway was giving me. Mayor Goodway immediately snapped her fingers, and both Mayor Humdinger and Jake opened up the coffins and dumped the contents under the makeshift stone altar. Surprisingly enough, the corpses that were in there didn't smell rancid, nor did their bodies look decayed. They looked as fresh as rain. I looked at the sight of all of the dead puppies in front of me, and then at that fat bitch, Mayor Goodway. "What the fuck is wrong with you people?" I screamed once more. She looked at me and giggled once more. "They weren't needed anymore." "What do you mean, not needed?" "They've been helping you ungrateful bastards for years now. How the fuck? Why the fuck would you even do that to them? Why?" As I said before, they weren't needed. In fact, they were never needed. Do you honestly think for a second that any of those situations we had all went through was actually important? Of course not. They never were. However, they did manage to prove one thing. "And that is," I said through gritted teeth, how much of a great sacrifice they'll make for our God." I didn't say anything. She continued, "You see, it's been a tradition in my family to sacrifice at least 6 worthy humans, or I guess in this case animals, to the gods of the underworld every 50 years. How wonderful that day was when the Paw Patrol came to be. Their brave hearts, their love of others, and their purity made them all perfect for the ritual. If you said you needed 6 people for your disgusting ritual, then why the hell are you even here? You already killed 6 people." "Well," she began, "there's just one small problem with that. You see, our ritual requires that all 6 sacrifices be of the same species, so Ryder really didn't count as part of the ritual. However, we did have some fun feeding him to Leon." "Who the hell is Leon?" I asked. Mayor Goodway immediately pointed at the beast in the cage. "That is Leon. He is one of the 5 guardians of hell, and is one of the gods of the underworld. He's considered our patron god that protects the town from major and destructive threats." "You're a sick bitch, you know that?" I snapped at her, trying to get out of my restraints. She only giggled more before she called up her pet chicken, Chicolita. The young chicken was also dressed in a similar robe, and in her beak she held a sharp, wavy dagger. "Now," she said as she used the dagger to rip my shirt off my body, "where is the dog?" "Get fucked!" I said, spitting in her face. Mayor Goodway didn't look very impressed. She immediately placed a blade on my exposed chest and slashed it. This caused me to scream out in agony, with cherry red blood pouring out of my open wound. "Again, where is Chase?" she said, pointing the dagger at me. "Shove that dagger up your fucking ass, bitch!" I said, spitting at her once more. She then started to slice into my skin, this time slower. I screamed out in agony once again as I flailed my arms as best as I could to slip away from the pain. Thankfully, one of the branches snapped slightly, rendering my arm with more movement than before. Mayor Goodway huffed before placing the edge of the blade to my neck. "I've tried being nice now. I'm not going to ask you again. Where is Chase?" "Woof, woof! Net!" A small sound erupted from the bushes in front of me, and then a large net sprang out and captured 4 of the robed men. Mayor Goodway immediately looked behind her to see what the hell was going on, and I quickly took this time to act. With all the strength I could muster, I ripped the loose branch from the tree that held my hand in place, and with it I punched Mayor Goodway straight in the face as hard as I could. She fell to the floor, but before she did, I immediately grabbed the dagger out of her hand and cut myself free. I immediately charged at the hooded freaks and started stabbing them repeatedly, until I wound up finding my gun laying next to the altar. As I grabbed my gun, I saw Chase moving slowly into the area with a flamethrower spewing out of his paw pack, burning at least 6 of the cult members to nothing but ashes and bones. Taking my gun, I fired round after round in each of the remaining members' stomachs, including the ones that were in my net. After finally finishing them off, Chase ran up to me and said, "Oh, thank goodness you're alright. I should say the same thing to you, Chase. How did you manage to find me?" "The fire. I just followed that." "What are we gonna do about that monster?" I asked. "Just leave that to me." "Ruff, ruff! Hose on!" Chase called out. The hose compartment from Marshall's pup pack immediately came out and started spraying water onto the beast. The beast screamed in agony as its body fizzled and smoked from the water being shot at it. After a good long while, the beast was nothing but a small puddle of ooze. Surprising enough, he had used holy water. Who would have guessed? As I was contemplating how I should thank Chase, I immediately heard a loud yelp blasting through my eardrums. I turned around and saw Mayor Goodway slipping a dagger into Chase's side. I pulled out my gun and shot a bullet between her eyes. Blood and bits of brain matter splattered the tree behind her before she fell to the ground with a thud. I dropped the gun and raced over to Chase. He was bleeding badly. I grabbed him and placed him on the makeshift altar, thinking, no, you're not dying on me, Chase, you're not dying on me. I placed my hand over the wound, trying to stop the bleeding, but only continued to flow from the wound. I knew an ambulance wouldn't arrive on time, and if I didn't do something fast, Chase would surely bleed out. I then ran to the fire pit and pulled out one of the burning logs. I blew out the fire on it and ran back to Chase. I placed my arm in his mouth and pressed the hot embers onto the wound. Chase bit down hard as he screamed in pain as I cauterized the wound. I didn't even feel the pain shooting up my arm at first, and to be honest, I didn't care. I wasn't going to let Chase die like this. After a few minutes, I removed the burning piece of wood from the wound. The bleeding had thankfully stopped in time. However, I knew I had to get Chase to a vet as soon as I possibly could. I grabbed Chase and ran as far away from that cave as fast as I possibly could. I didn't stop running until I got to my car and placed Chase in the front passenger seat. Then I drove. No, I sped like a maniac all the way to the emergency animal care center about 100 miles away from the town. To make a long story short, I made it in time. Chase was admitted by the doctors for emergency surgery, which lasted for about 7.5 hours in total. Thankfully, the nurses managed to save him. Hell, they were even nice enough to attend to my wounds as well. After the surgery, Chase and I were allowed to leave. However, Chase had to be on bed rest for about 2.5 weeks, and then brought back to remove the stitches. Needless to say, I'm grateful that Chase is still alive, and I'm glad we managed to actually stop and kill that thing, as well as those other disgusting followers of its. I can now sleep peacefully at night, knowing that everything is all better. However, just today, I read in the newspaper that everything had finally been exposed, and the remaining people that hadn't been killed were arrested on the spot. However, there was one thing in the article that I read that turned my blood to ice and made me drop the coffee I was drinking to the ground, causing it to shatter into pieces. Apparently, there was no sign of Mayor Goodway. The sound of my coffee mug crashing to the ground echoed throughout my apartment building as I stared at the newspaper in complete and utter shock and horror. There, right in front of the newspaper, was a picture of the main crime scene. However, there were only 6 body bags that surrounded the area, with one large blood stain staining the spot where I had shot Mayor Goodway. I, in a panic, skimmed through the rest of the newspaper to try and find some information about the current ongoing investigation. I later found a paragraph that only 6 bodies had been discovered, as well as a few injured members of the cult group at the scene of the crime, which I knew for an absolute fact was absolute bullshit. I was there. There wasn't just 10 people. There was at least 11 in total. As I continued to search around the article to find any more about the bodies, my cell phone went off. "Hello?" I said nervously.
Hey, Officer Michael, it's me, Chief Marcus. I just wanted to call and ask you how you were doing, as well as thank you for helping us out with the case. It really helped us out a lot.
It wasn't a problem, Chief. I was just doing my job. Or, well, I had to, or else you would have arrested me.
Yeah, sorry about that. Hey, I need you to do one more thing for me.
And that is?
I need you to come over to the police station. Just this once. I just need you to come over and give your testimony so that we could use it to charge the remaining alive cult members and bring them to justice. Also, bring Chase along with you.
Sir, with all due respect, Chase has already been through a lot of shit already. I don't think he really needs to have any more, issues to deal with.
You don't need to worry about that Officer Marcus. Trust me, I guarantee you we're not going to talk to him or anything like that. In fact, we actually have a pretty nice surprise for him that I think you and him will probably really enjoy.
And with that, the call had ended. I took a deep breath and placed the newspaper on my kitchen counter while I went to go grab a broom and mop to clean up the shattered coffee mug and spilt coffee. As I did this, I heard the sound of Chase walking down the hallway and into the kitchen where I was at. "Good morning, Mike," Chase said with a grin. "Hey, Chase, did you sleep well?" I asked. "Yeah, I did. I had a little bit of pain from my side every so often," Chase said as he pointed at his bandaged side, which was starting to turn red with the small amounts of blood. "Well, I'm glad that you're alright, Chase. I'll make sure to change your bandages and give you some painkillers once I get done around with cleaning this mess up. Oh, and be careful of the broken shards on the ground." "Sure thing," Chase said as he limped away from the kitchen area and into the living room. After a few minutes of cleaning up the mess from the coffee and sweeping up the shards of glass, I made my way over to the counter to get some more gauze bandages from one of the drawers and some painkillers. Then I went over my way to Chase, gently picked him up, and slowly started unwrapping the bandages. He winced slightly in pain as I removed them. After removing the final bandage off of Chase's body, I looked at the stitched up wound. Thankfully, it was healing up properly. There were no signs of infection, and the wound seemed to be closing up very, very quickly. After cleaning up the wound with some peroxide and alcohol, I wrapped the fresh bandage around his body and patted himself on the head. "Alright, Chase. Now before I give the medication, I need to tell you something important." "What is it?" Chase asked. "Well, I got a call from Chief Marcus, and we need to go to the police station." "What for?" Chase asked. "Well, it's nothing bad. In fact, there's actually a surprise for us there." Chase's ears immediately lit up once I had told him about the surprise. "Really? What is it?" Chase said joyfully. "I'm not really sure what it is, to be honest with you." "When are we going to the station?" Chase asked me. "When we're both done with breakfast," I had told him. Once Chase and I had finally finished our breakfast, we both got into the car and made our way to the station. On the ride there, Chase decided to spark up a conversation to try and destroy the crazy, deafening silence that was prominent in our car. Well, that, and the fact of the matter that my radio was completely broken, so there really wasn't anything we could do about that. "Hey, Mike," Chase asked me. "Yeah, Chase?" I responded back. "You seem kind of freaked out today," Chase said with a concerned tone. I honestly couldn't say anything. "What's bothering you? Is it about what happened at that cult thing at the cave?" I didn't really know how to respond to this question. I mean, should I tell Chase the truth, or just brush it off? Well, I knew for a fact that lying wouldn't really do much of any good, and Chase did indeed save me from being sacrificed for a fucking tar demon. So, I sucked it up and decided to just go on ahead and tell the truth. I mean, I owed him that much. "Well, not exactly, Chase. I mean, don't get me wrong. It really messed me up badly, but that's not the reason why I'm a bit freaked out today," I said. "Then what's up? What's the problem?" Chase asked me. "I saw something in the newspaper about that cult, in the aftermath of what had happened once I took you to the hospital." "Okay, keep going," Chase said, eager for me to continue on for more information. "I read in the newspaper that only 10 of the cult members were caught during the police raid. 6 of them were dead, and the other 4 were admitted into the hospital before being arrested by police. However, Mayor Goodway wasn't there at all." Chase's eyes widened like saucers. No. No, 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 no. That's not possible! You can't be serious right now!" Chase screamed. "I'm afraid so, Chase. Mayor Goodway wasn't there." "But how the hell is that even possible? You shot her point blank in the head. Her brains and blood practically splattered all over the tree next to me. I saw it with my own eyes." "I know, Chase. I don't have any idea how she even survived that. I mean, maybe the ambulance worker got there before the police did and carried her off, I guess," I said, trying to rationalize the situation as best as I could. "Wait, if they did do that, wouldn't they have also had to taken away the other members as well?" Chase asked. "That's true. I don't know exactly. I really don't know, Chase. I have a very crazy suspicion," Chase began. "What if, what if the cops and the ambulance workers and everybody else are in on this too?" I looked at Chase, surprised. "Wait, what? You heard me. What if they're all in it as well? What if it isn't just Mayor Goodway and those others? What if the entire town's on it?" "Chase, I mean, it's plausible, I'll admit that, Chase, but I don't really see that being completely true." "And how is that?" "Well, I mean, for one, I'm not going after trying to kill you, so yeah, that's one part of it. And the second part, if they were really working for this, do you honestly think that the police would be investigating this? Chase scratched his chin slightly. Okay, you do have a point, but I still think that there's something suspicious going on. Okay, that I can agree with you, Chase. With that little conversation pretty much said and done, I just decided to go on ahead and keep my mouth shut and continue driving down the road towards the police station. After about an hour or so of driving, we both finally had made it. Once there, I got out of my car and made my way towards the passenger seat of my car and carefully placed Chase on my shoulders in order to keep him from getting injured any further. We then both made our way into the police station, only to be greeted by my boss, who seemed to have been waiting for us. "Ah, Officer Chase and Officer Michael, glad you could come by," Officer Marcus said as he clasped his hands together. "Hey, Chief," I answered. "Hi, Officer Marcus," Chase said excitedly. Officer Marcus then started walking towards us in extravagant glee, only to then recoil in abject horror at the way we were looking. "Damn, you guys look like shit," Officer Marcus said as he stared at us with a shocked face. I immediately placed one of my free hands on Chase's ears and glared intently at my boss. "Not in front of Chase, Chief. Don't swear," I said sternly. "Oh, hey, sorry about that. Anyway, so, Chase, are you ready for your surprise?" the officer asked excitedly. "You bet I am. I love surprises." "Well, you're gonna love this, Chase." "Officer Tony, I'm gonna need you to come over here and cover Chase's eyes for a surprise." He then looked over to another officer, a female one. "Also, Officer Mary, come here as well and cover Officer Michael's eyes as well." Within less than a few seconds, both their eyes were covered with bandanas. Then we were both escorted to some place in the far right of the building. Then the sound of a door opening filled my ears, and then I heard the chief say, "All right, 1, 2, 3. After the chief said 3, both of our blindfolds were ripped off. It was then that I was greeted by 2 puppies sitting in the middle of the floor. The first pup I laid my eyes on was a male brown and white Chihuahua with a brown cowboy hat, green vest, green pup pack, and green collar. The other pup was a female purple and white husky with a teal snow hat and matching sweater vest, and a pup pack colored in the same way. I looked at them in curiosity and surprise. Were these 2 pups also members of the Paw Patrol? I'd never really heard about another 2. I then looked up at Chase, who then had a look of surprise plastered on his face. Officer Marcus then picked up Chase from my shoulders as gently as he possibly could and placed him next to the other pups. He looked at them for a few seconds before saying, "Everest? Tracker? Is that really you?" Chase said as tears filled up in his eyes. "Yeah, Chase, it's us. We heard about what happened to you," Everest said as she walked towards Chase and placed a paw on his shoulder. "We're so sorry about what happened to you and your friends," Tracker spoke up. "We want you to know that we're here for you, Chase. We're not going to let anything get in the way of that," Everest said. I could see that Chase was crying. Hell, even I was starting to tear up a little bit. Chase said nothing, but instead he ran to the 2 of them and started licking them both. It was then, as Chase was reuniting with his friends, that my boss tapped me on my shoulder and motioned for me to join him outside the hall. Once we were both outside the room, Chief Marcus started up the conversation. "Well, that was nice. I honestly knew that Chase would love his surprise." "Who are they?" I asked. "You honestly don't know who those 2 pups are?" my boss asked me confused. "No, sir," I responded back. "I've never really heard of them. At least the Paw Patrol have never really told me about them." "Well, to answer your question, those pups are Tracker and Everest. They're also members of the Paw Patrol." Oh, now I remember. Oh, I'm such a dunce sometimes. I'm sorry. Now I remember. Chase told me about them about a year back. I'm such an idiot. So, if you don't mind me asking, why are they here? They're here to give Chase some much-needed support. Oh, and one thing as well. They're also going to be living with you as well. My jaw dropped. Wait, what? I yelled out in surprise. Why for? As I just said, they're here to support Chase. Plus the fact of the matter that their owners are practically dead. Katie specifically, I mean, you did stab her to death. Don't you remember? I blushed a little bit. Yeah, I remember that. But you won't have to worry, Officer Marcus said. They're not going to be staying for too long. Well, I guess it's alright. I mean, Chase could really use the company anyway, I said back. Marcus smiled at me, and then he asked me to meet him in one of the interrogation rooms in the police station. I followed him, and once we were both there, he told me to take a seat in the metal table and that sat in the middle of the room. So what happened out there? The chief questioned. Oh my gosh, it's a long story, I said back. You don't have to worry, you just need to discuss what happened to you and Chase, and that's all. I let out a sigh, and then proceeded to explain everything that happened at that cave. I told him about the glow of the fire, the large stone altar, and the robed people. I also told him about Mayor Goodway and the others, and what they had done to me, and what she had also done to Chase. The chief looked at me a few times, and took some notes on what I was saying. I then told him about Mayor Goodway being missing from the crime scene, and then Chief Marcus immediately froze. What? He said in shock. Mayor Goodway, I checked the newspapers. She was gone from the scene. That's not possible, Officer Michael. Mayor Goodway was present there. I mean, yes, she was deceased at the crime scene, but she was there. My jaw dropped at this. Wait, what? I swear, she wasn't there. I mean, well, as far as I can tell you, she's perfectly dead. There was a bullet wound in her head and plenty of other injuries as well. She's actually at the morgue as we speak. I sat there in shock. I just didn't know really what to think or what to say. I just decided to go on ahead and just drop it immediately. Well, Officer Michael, I guess that wraps everything up, Officer Michael said, clicking his pen closed and stacking the papers together. Well, I'm going to let you guys go now. You all have a good day. I thanked Officer Marcus for his time and made my way out of the interrogation room. I then made my way towards the room where Chase and the others were at. Upon entering the room, I saw that Chase, Everest, and Tracker were all playing a game of ball. I smiled at this, knowing that Chase was going to love the news I had for him. Hey Chase, I said aloud. Yeah, Mike? Chase, I got some good news for you, I said. What is it? Chase said, jumping around excitedly. Well, I just had a chat with the chief and, well, I paused. What is it? What is it? What is it? Chase said, jumping in a way that would honestly rival Sky's jump. Chase, as of today, both Tracker and Everest are going to be living with us from now on. Chase's eyes immediately widened with joy. Really? You bet, Chase. Chase and the other pups started jumping around and howling for joy. Then they all ran up to me and jumped onto me, causing me to fall to the floor with a thud. Then, with that, they all began to lick me. Alright, you guys, that's enough, I said, practically being tickled by their tongues. Tracker, Everest, and Chase then all got off my chest, and then without a single word, they all ran, with the exception of Chase, who practically limped, to my car at a breakneck speed. Wow, that was quick, I said flatly. With that, I thanked the other officers for the surprise, and on my way towards the car, I got in and drove home. The rest of the night went by without anything crazy happening. We all enjoyed ourselves and practically celebrated. We had some pizza, drank some alcohol, don't ask how or why, we just did, and watched a crap ton of horror movies to kind of freak up the mood or whatever. Hours upon hours of fun passed, until my cell phone went off again for the second time that night. Hello?
Officer Marcus! Oh, fuck, oh, shit! Oh, fucking shit! Mr. Marcus, are you here? Can you hear me?
Who is this?
It's me, Officer Marcus. Oh, crap. Officer Michael, you need to get here as soon as you fucking can. We seriously need your help right now. I don't know what the fuck's going on right now. I just don't.
Chief Marcus, hang on, calm down. What's going on? I don't understand. I mean, are you hurt? Are you in trouble? Or what's going on?
Just get to the cemetery. Please, I'm begging you, Mark. Michael, please, just get to the... No.
Hello? Officer Marcus? Officer Marcus, can you hear me? Officer Marcus! Mike, what was that? Chase asked me. That was Officer Marcus, I said in pure shock. Is something wrong? Trekker asked me. You guys, I gotta go, I said, running around looking for my gun. Mike, wait, are you sure about this? Everest said. I think that Mayor Goodway's, or somebody's behind this. You guys, I need to go and investigate. You guys stay here. Wait, what? Chase yelled. Yeah, I need to go, I said frantically as I placed my gun into its holder. Wait, Everest yelled as she hopped off the couch. Take this with you. Everest then placed a small tablet into my hand. This is, or was, Ryder's paw pad. He had at least 20 or so of them remade just in case if he ever lost one of them. Use it in case you need to call us. I thanked Everest for the device, and after placing it into my jacket, I made my way to the car and drove it past to the cemetery. As I drove to my destination in a furious and frantic speed, the small pitter-patter of rain started up. Soon enough, the rain went from a few small droplets to a tidal wave of water that made driving almost impossible to see through. Just as I was about to lose my sanity from the amount of heavy rain, I saw it. Adventure Bay Cemetery. I knew for a fact that I had finally arrived. With the utmost care, I parked my car in front of the main entrance of the cemetery and got out of my car. As I exited it, I was soon pelted by the slurry of heavy rain and bits of hail. I quickly covered myself with my police jacket and entered into the cemetery at a quick pace. Officer Marcus! I yelled out. There was no answer. Officer Marcus! I yelled out once more. Still nothing. I continued to look around the place to try and find any signs of life in this desolate graveyard. After a few minutes later, I found a single badge lying in the middle of the graveyard. I slowly picked it up, and with my flashlight carefully examined it. My heart immediately stopped at whose the badge it was. It was Officer Marcus's. I dropped it immediately and ran up the hill where the bodies of Marshall, Zuma, Rocky, Sky, and the others were buried at. Upon arriving, I looked to and fro for anyone. However, I wound up misplacing my step and found myself falling about 6 feet down into a large hole. Thankfully, I hadn't knocked myself out when I did that. However, when I went to go and pull myself up, I had noticed the open and empty coffin of Marshall the Fire Pup. Oh, no. Damn it! Not this shit again! I yelled out in a fit of anger and defeat. I crawled out of the grave, nearly slipping a few times in the mud from the rain. Thankfully, I managed to get out of the grave, and once I did, I saw something that made my eyes widen with fear. All the graves of the pups were completely eviscerated and empty. All the coffins were still there, however the bodies of the pups were missing. Maybe this is what Officer Marcus was calling me about. I immediately ran out of the cemetery and back to my car. Upon entering, I started it up and started driving towards the one place that I knew for an absolute fact that the bodies would be at, and maybe even the officers. The cave. It didn't take me long to get myself to where I was going at. Once I had arrived, I noticed the familiar and red flickering that I had seen a few weeks back. That could only mean one thing. Those cult members were back. And where there were cult members, there was Mayor Goodway. I grabbed my gun from my gun holster and made my way towards the path to the cave in the same way I'd went last time. However, I made sure to check my surroundings to make sure that I wasn't being followed or anything. After a few minutes of walking, I found the main clearing that led to the cave. Once I got there, I was surprised to see that nobody was there. The only thing that I did see was a large bonfire. Then I saw that the cave was completely open. No debris or anything. I knew for a fact that something was wrong, so I grabbed Ryder's tablet and contacted Everest and Tracker. "Hey Mike, what's up?" Everest said as her face popped up onto the screen. "Everest, we've got a major problem," I said quietly. "What is it?" "I've got no time to explain. Just get yourself as well as Tracker and Chase here with you as soon as you can." I immediately hung up the call on the tablet and carefully placed the device back into my jacket. I then got up from where I was and slowly made my way towards the entrance of the cave. As I did, flashbacks of what had happened months back started flashing in my head, laying a rapid pace. The blood, the collars, the equipment, and the half-eaten bodies of the pups all made every single step I had made a lot harder than it should have been. As I went deeper into the cave, I noticed a lack of torches illuminating the area. So in order to try and not run into a stalagmite or something along those lines, I pulled out my flashlight and turned it on. It didn't really help too much since the battery was starting to die out, and the light bulb would only illuminate a certain area of the cave with a dim light. So with as much caution as I could muster, I slowly made my way further into the poorly lit hallway of the cave. Step by step, I grew closer and closer to where I needed to get to, the back room where I had met the beast for the first time. I continued walking for about 5 minutes when I heard a wet squishing sound emanate from my foot hitting something. I shined my light at what I had stepped on and I saw the mutilated head of a police officer. I jumped back in fright as my flashlight dropped to the ground. The light immediately flickered to its brightest setting, and I saw one of the worst sights that I had ever seen since I had found the bodies of Zuma, Rocky, and Marshall. There were bodies, about 25 in total, all hanging from the ceiling of the cave by their necks by what appeared to be barbed wire. Their bodies were all the police officers from the ABPD. They looked just like they had been They looked like they had just been killed, as I noticed an absence of decay from the hanging corpses. They all, with the exception of one body, looked like they had been drained of their blood. Their skin bore a pale, empty, and pure white hue, with a hint of blue in their faces, fresh blood still dribbling down their necks from contact with the barbed wire. I could smell the overbearing scent of iron as I continued to walk. I wasn't sure what was going to happen to me, but I braced myself for whatever the hell was awaiting me. I continued down the path, trying not to retch from the heavy stench of gore and the metallic aftertaste of blood that lingered in my mouth for some reason. I then made my way to what I assumed was the main part of the cave. I entered. I shined my flashlight around the area and saw her. No, it. Mayor Goodway, standing at the very center of the cave. She bore a look of absolute hatred in her eyes as she stared at me. She then snapped her fingers, and the torches that had previously been unlit lit up like a 70s game show. "How are you still alive, bitch?" I said with shock mixed with anger. Goodway started to chuckle. Then she spoke. "You see, Mike, after you shot me in the head, Leon came to me in spirit form. You see, your little holy water didn't completely destroy him. You just got rid of his physical form. And then he came to me and took over my body. It took a little while for the bullet wound to completely heal, but after a while I had completely regained consciousness. And here I am today, ready to enact my revenge. Before I could say anything else, I heard the sound of Chase's police siren in the distance. I turned and saw Chase, Everest, and Tracker pulling up to the cave, jumping out of their pup-mobiles, and running into the cave. Goodway's grin turned into a deep, angry, and hateful frown when she saw the three pups making their way towards me. "Pups!" I yelled in joy. "You're just in time!" Mayor Goodway?" Everest said with her head tilted with the confused yet horrified look on her face. "She's not what you think she is, Everest," I said, staring at Goodway. Goodway looked at me, smirked, and then began to laugh. "Do you honestly think you and your silly little pups are gonna stop me?" "Mike, what is she talking about?" questioned Tracker. "Don't listen to her, Tracker," I said. "She's just an ugly bitch. As long as I'm here, you're all gonna be fine. Now, I have a plan," I said as I grabbed my necklace and yanked it off my neck. "It's time to get rid of this bitch, once and for all," I said to myself. "You must be very happy to be working with the Paw Patrol," Everest said, looking over at Tracker. "It doesn't seem like either of you get to do much with them now, do you?" She grinned a huge, ugly grin. "Don't listen to her. She's fucking nuts," I yelled. Goodway continued on with their little speech. "You want to know what's funny, Mike? How do you think I managed to find you and the other pups so easily?" I look at her, confused, yet concerned. "What are you talking about, you fat bitch?" I said to her. "You see, I had a little help finding you. 2 special pups." I paused. Wait, what?" I said with a concerned look on my face. I then pulled out the pup pad that Everest had given to me. I flipped it over on its back, only to see a flashing tracker signal on its pad. It was all coming together now. I thought in my head, "I can't believe it." I then turned around, now facing Everest and Tracker. I yelled, "You motherfuckers!" Chase's ears went down as he backed up slowly, feeling scared. "I always knew that there was something suspicious about you two since the day we met. I took you motherfuckers in to be part of this family, only for you to do something like this?" I quickly turned back to Goodway, only to see her just standing there with that wide fucking grin on her face. I started walking towards her. "This ends now!" I screamed as I felt a sharp pain in my leg. "Mike, no!" I yelled Chase. I fell on the ground, only to see a pocket knife stuck into my leg. I look up to see Tracker with the same fucking grin on his face, stepping back thinking that I was gonna fight back. Everest started running towards Chase. "No! Don't kill him just yet," said Goodway. "We need him alive for a little longer. I want him to suffer." Everest nodded as she picked up a rock, hitting Chase over the head and knocking him out. "You son of a bitch! I swear, if you put another finger on him!" I yelled as I quickly pulled the knife out of my leg. "What should we do with Mike?" asked Tracker. "Oh, I have something special for him," Goodway replied. Goodway nodded her head, and I turned to see Tracker with the same rock she had hit Chase with. She swung the rock towards me as I quickly dodged it, falling on the ground again. "Not this time," Tracker said as he bit down on my right leg where the knife wound was. I screamed as I took the knife and swung it over at Tracker. The knife barely touched his fur as I felt something hard hitting the back of my head. Within a few seconds, I could see nothing but blackness. My eyes widened as I tried to rub the back of my head, only to find that I couldn't. Both of my hands were tied behind my back as I quickly struggled to try and get free. I could see that all the police gear and gun that I had was on a table near me. I looked up to see Chase still knocked out. He was tied up too, but not like me though. All 4 of his paws were tied to 4 sticks that were planted on the ground, stretching him out. Chase was stretched out in a big stone in the middle of the circle in front of me. The circle was a pentagram, with lit candles surrounding it. I looked to my right to see Goodway in a huddle with Tracker and Everest talking quietly. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but I knew for a fact that it wasn't good. I turned my head back to Chase as I heard him groaning. He woke up slowly, turning his head towards me with a look of worry. "Mike," groaned Chase. I quickly tried shushing him. "Oh, good. You're both awake," Goodway said happily. Chase and I both looked at Goodway. "Mike, I wanted you to have the best seat in the house." I glared at her with such anger in my eyes. "You want to kill someone, bitch?" I shouted. "Kill me!" "Oh, don't worry, Mike," Goodway said as she slowly turned towards me. "I'm saving you for something very special. But for now, I only need Chase." I continued to struggle more and more. Thankfully, I felt the ropes around my wrist getting loose. Apparently, those losers hadn't tightened it up that easily. I felt so helpless when I saw Goodway walking towards Chase. Goodway was now in the circle, standing beside Chase. Chase started to have a panic attack. Mike, please help me!" I struggled so hard to get free that I fell to the ground, making the ropes around my wrist even more loose. "Tracker, Everest, watch Mike to make sure he doesn't do anything stupid." As I saw Tracker and Everest slowly walking towards me, they were both growling, showing their teeth. "I want you to do something. I'm not scared of you motherfuckers." I looked back at Chase and Goodway as she looked at me. "Now, Mike, you're gonna finally see the truth. You're gonna finally see who I really am." I watched with a nervous look on my face. Goodway then closed her eyes and raised both of her arms. "Leon, the gods of the underworld, come to me." I started to feel the whole cave rumble as I saw Tracker and Everest lose their balance. I wanted to close my eyes so badly, but I couldn't. Goodway then started lifting off the ground as her whole body started to transform. I then saw the other dead pups lifting up in the air as their heads ripped off from their bodies, blood squirting all over Chase. I couldn't even imagine the pain Chase was going through as he saw this. He was crying as he shut his eyes extremely tight. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The heads of all the pups started to connect to Goodway's deformed body as the headless bodies fell back under the ground. Goodway didn't even look human anymore. All I saw was a giant beast with long arms coming out with huge sharp talons, her eyes glowing green as her whole face crackled and as her jawline broke as it barely hung from her mouth. Now looking like a black, enormous, deformed spider with all the dead pups' heads on it, all their eyes glowing green as well, with their jaws snapped open, hanging from the upper parts of their mouths. Goodway started laughing, in that low, deep, demonic voice. Tracker and Everest were now paying attention to Goodway. This was my chance. The ropes around my wrists started coming loose as I quickly got out of them. Tracker noticed me and started running towards my gear on the table, but all I needed was my gun. I reached for my gun and Tracker jumped as he bit down on my arm. I grunted as I grabbed his neck and threw him against the wall. Tracker fell to the ground along with the wine. He got up, limping towards Goodway. I cocked my pistol and aimed it right at Tracker's head. As my bullet went through Tracker's head, causing him to fall to the ground with blood squirting from his head. His hind legs twitched as he laid there in a puddle of his own blood. Goodway heard the gunshot and turned her head towards me. I could hear the cracking sound as she turned her head. Goodway then laughed at me as she spoke in that disgusting tone of voice.
"It's too late, Mike. You can't stop me now."
She she said as she cut the ropes that was tying to Chase, grabbing him by his hind legs, making him upside down. Lifting him high off of the ground, I aimed my gun at Goodway, shooting at her, using up all my ammo. But it was useless. The bullets didn't affect her. Goodway laughed once more in that sick, demonic voice.
At this point, Mike, I'm unstoppable. You can't stop me.
Goodway then turned her head to Chase. Oh, the fear in Chase's eyes was unbearable. Chase said in anger, "Go to hell, Goodway." Goodway laughed.
Where do you think I come from, Chase? As I look into your eyes, I want to see you suffer.
Chase's eyes closed as Leon's arm extended behind Goodway. I could see a sharp talon coming out of the arm. I yelled, "Chase!" feeling so helpless, a million things going through my mind, thinking of how I could try and stop this monster. Chase replied in a shaky voice, "Mike." I saw the arm take a fast swing, plunging its claw right into Chase's side, right in the same place he got stabbed the last time. A huge gasp came from Chase as a claw got stuck into his side. Leon then quickly removed his claw from Chase's side as blood squirted from his open wound. Some of Chase's blood got on my face and body. Leon then let go of Chase, causing him to fall to the ground. I started running as fast as I could for Chase, trying to catch him. But I was too late. I heard a thud, and then Chase's body fell on the ground, hearing some of his bones breaking as he hit the floor. "Chase!" I yelled as I caught up to him, kneeling down, putting both of my hands over Chase's wounds. "Damn it, no!" I screamed. "Don't do this to me, Chase, please!" Chase couldn't talk. He was in deep shock as his whole body shook with the puddle of blood growing underneath him faster and faster. Everest then ran up to Goodway/Leon. "What should I do now, Goodway?" Everest asked while looking up to Leon. Leon slowly looked down at Everest.
Oh, Everest. I really appreciate all the help, but I'm afraid you're not needed anymore.
What? Everest replied with a shocked look. Before Everest could say anything else, Leon took one of its arms, quickly grabbing Everest's neck, pinning her against the wall, choking her as two more arms came out with sharp claws, jamming both claws into Everest's stomach. Everest screamed and gasped as both of Leon's claws dug deeper into her ribcage. Everest at this point was pretty much vomiting blood as the claws split her ribcage completely open, as blood and organs gushed and spilled onto the ground. Everest died instantly. Leon pulled his claws out, causing Everest to fall lifeless on the ground, with their face in a shocked and horrified expression. I immediately snapped as I got up and turned back to Leon.
Now it's your turn.
Goodway said as the beast reached its arm out, trying to grab me. I quickly dodged it. As I rolled, my crucifix fell out of my pocket and onto the ground. Thankfully, I had a spare one. I thought to myself as I hit the ground. I quickly spun around and grabbed the crucifix before Leon could. I looked around until I saw the pentagram where all the dead pups were. I quickly got up and ran to it.
Oh, no, you don't!
Goodway yelled as Leon's arm extended and wrapped around my leg, causing me to fall to the floor, dropping the crucifix in the process. I turned around to see Leon's other arm reaching out with the same sharp claw that I'd stabbed Chase with. I struggled to get out of Leon's grasp, but it was too strong. Leon's claw reached my back as it made a huge cut all the way down to my spine. I screamed as my muscles spasmed, forced me to move more towards the cross. As Leon started pulling me back, I reached my hand out as far as it could go, my finger just gripping the end of the chain of the crucifix. I quickly pulled it in towards me. As I got a better grip on it, I clutched it with one hand and drove it right into Leon's arm, causing him to twitch and release my leg, as steam poured out of his arm. I had one chance to do this, and I had to do it now and quick. I got up as I saw the claw coming down on me. I waited for the right moment. As the claw got closer, I quickly dodged it, and the claw dug into the ground next to me. I ran fast to the pentagram. I knew I had a very little chance of making it, so I took aim and threw the crucifix towards the pentacle. I landed right in the edge of the circle. Leon's arm grabbed me again, pulling me off the ground. As Leon's claw was about to stab me, it paused. Leon's grip had loosened, and I could feel my body being released. I fell back under the ground. Thankfully, I wasn't lifted as high as Chase had been, so thankfully I wasn't injured as badly, or really at all. I looked up at Leon. He started shaking as it cried out an ear-piercing scream. I laughed a little bit. I immediately went up to the crucifix and smeared it all over the circle, destroying the pentagram and the candles over it. Leon's scream got louder, as I felt the whole cave was shaking as rocks began falling. I quickly got up and ran over to Chase, picking him up and holding him tight. I turned around to see Leon getting bigger, as if he was inflating. Leon gave out one final scream before exploding, causing chunks of gore and blood to spread all over the cave, as the whole cave started caving in from the inside, crushing what was left of Leon/Goodway. I turned back around as I ran faster out of the cave. I ran out with Chase, just as the cave caved in with the rocks tumbling down, blocking the tunnel to the cave completely. While holding Chase in my arms, I gently set him down. Chase coughed up blood as I continued to press on the wound, trying to make the bleeding stop. "It's gonna be okay. You're gonna be alright," I said, trying to hold back my tears. I don't think I'm gonna make it this time, Mike," whimpered Chase. He was shaking. I could feel my throat lock up as tears started pouring down my face. "Damn it, no!" I cried. "Don't you dare say that!" I grabbed Chase, holding him tight in my arms, still trying to stop the bleeding. Chase started to cry. "Mike, I'm so sorry. This is all my fault," Chase said while coughing. "No, Chase," I cried. "This is my fault. If I just didn't pick up that damn phone, if I wouldn't have forced you to come with me, none of this would have happened. We should have just left that shithole of a town where we had the chance." Chase lifted his shaking paw to my face, calming me down. Chase whispered, "It's okay, Mike." I started to cry more. "I'm gonna be with my friends again in heaven. I can see them, too. I can see a light. It's so pretty. Thank you for everything, Mike." Chase took his last breath. "I love you, Mike." Chase's eyes slowly closed, with his head resting against my chest. Chase? Chase?" I cried. I knew he was gone, as the rain continued to pour down on me and Chase's lifeless body. I didn't know what to do now. All I could hear was ringing in my head as I stared at Chase's body. A million thoughts running through my head. I thought to myself, what do I do now? I'm the only one that's left. Everyone's gone. It felt like my whole body was shutting off like a light switch. I was living in a nightmare that I just couldn't wake out of. This was reality. Adventure Bay, where everything was always supposed to be fun and happy, was gone. I made up my mind. I picked up Chase with tears running down my face and slowly walked to the cemetery. The walk felt like an eternity, but I finally arrived at the Adventure Bay cemetery, only to see the whole place still destroyed, tombstones flipped over and rolled up coffins that were just dug out. Carrying Chase, still in disbelief that this was all still happening, I walked over to the corner of the cemetery to see that there was a clean, shiny black small coffin. Under it was a deep hole as if it was just about to be lowered into the ground. I stared at the coffin for a while and then nodded my head. I knew what had to be done. I stared at the coffin for a while, and I looked over and opened it. I gently rested Chase's body on it. I placed his head on the white soft pillow and folded his paws together so that they were resting on his stomach. All I could do was just stare at Chase's lifeless body, feeling guilt and anger build up inside me. "Chase, I'm so sorry," I cried with more tears coming down my face. Those were the only words that would come out of my mouth. As I took one more look at Chase, I slowly closed the coffin. I picked up a rose and right next to the coffin and gently set it into it, and then started turning the handle slowly as I saw the coffin lowering into the ground deeper and deeper. After that, I grabbed the nearest shovel and started shoveling the dirt back into the hole and onto the coffin. When I was done, I tossed the shovel to the ground and dropped to my knees, putting my hands on my face, smothering it in dirt and Chase's blood as I started to cry louder. I cried so much to the point where tears stopped coming out of my eyes. As I slowly got up, my body and clothes soaked and covered in dirt and blood, I took one more look at the pile of dirt where Chase laid in peace before I walked back to my car, driving back to my apartment. Keys jiggled as I unlocked the door and opened it. I walked to my apartment, hearing nothing but the rain hitting against my window. I walked to my room, hoping and praying to see Chase barking and jumping up on me, licking my face repeatedly. But all I could see was a cold, dark, empty room. I took my uniform off and laid it on my bed, and strapping my belt for my pants, I sat on my bed, staring at it for 30 minutes. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath and sighed as I got up and walked to my kitchen, pulling a chair into the main living room where my ceiling fan hung. At this point, nothing could stop me from what I was about to do. I wrapped the belt around the ceiling fan, giving it a quick pull to make sure it was sturdy, and then wrapped the belt around my neck, making sure it was tight. I closed my eyes for the last time. I'll soon wake up from this nightmare, and I'll be together forever with my friends and family for eternity. I slowly started to lift my right leg in front of me, smiling, knowing that I would be at peace soon, and I was going to be with Chase and all the other pups again. As I slowly lost my balance, I started to lean my body forward. In fear and surprise, as your eyes widen, your mouth goes dry with each battered breath. You try to scream, your mind begs to leave, glued to your computer screen. The killers they slash, the tapes burn and crash. The cartridge you bought will be your final haunt. The rituals of hate will seal your fate. The tears you shed will be from the fear-gripping horror-driven nightmarish gore-filled, terrorizing, hateful, burning, violent, rage-inducing, knife-slashing, blood-splattering, silent screams. Only time will tell if you will escape this online hell. Your horror-filled obsessions will come with its own regressions. Your pathetic screams will not be heeded in any way, because your nightmares will come at any day.